Look at the range that Execute has too. Very strong range. We will hit it when he pops back up here so we can see. So it just has 477 pop up there. Alrighty folks, we are back today. 1.0 is out. I hope everyone has been enjoying it since the patch released. The expanded ranked times, the new looks of the jungle, and some of the minor hero and item changes. Check out the video I released on launch day, Tuesday, which covered all of the hero and item balance changes and my discussion on how they would impact the meta. Most of the changes are very minor, but there are a couple standouts, so check that video out if you haven't read through the patch notes, or even if you have and you just want to hear my opinions on what I see going forward into this 1.0 patch. Again, I would think that we're looking at least 3 to 4 weeks before another patch balances anything out, unless they see some major issues with the way Zinx has been released, and then they might, do that 0.1 patch type thing. But we are back on 1.0, which means we are back with new updated spreadsheets. So happy to be back to the spreadsheet game. We got a lot of stuff to cover. This one is going to be a shorter one, but we got some other ones coming up here soon, like a one for Shinbi that I'm excited to get into, because Shinbi's not a hero I play very much. And then I think after that we're going to actually do a support item based one. But I'm happy to do a spreadsheet a week-ish for y'all, so if you have any more requests for spreadsheets you'd like to see, drop them in the comments, and I will add them to the list. And let's get right into it with Feng Mao. So Feng Mao is very unique as a hero to build on, because he gets a lot of scaling on different abilities from flat pin. So I don't know if there's any other heroes that get any scalings off of flat pin. Off the top of my head, there may be one like Kalari or something that has a flat pin scaling or something, but Feng Mao's the only one I know of. We're focusing today on his Earth Shatter ultimate, the Execute, and because that one has a really crazy flat pin scaling of 400%. So going through it right here, we've got Feng Mao's ultimate Earth Shatter. It does, well, this isn't the damage that it does, this is the execute range that you have for it. So if you don't know Feng Mao's ultimate, if they're below a certain health range, it executes them automatically when you hit them. There'll be a little pop-up on them, like you saw at that intro clip of on the steel test dummy. Little icon will pop up on them, and that means they are in execute range. If you hit your ult on them, it's going to execute them. So also, if you get that execute, you can cast the ult again within a few seconds for free, no mana, and it just, it puts a little timer up on your screen like you saw, and you can just fire it back to back. So Feng Mao as an execute machine has a really high threshold for his executes if you build them correctly, and that's what we're going through today. So the execute range is 300, and then at max rank it gets up to 660 base, and then it adds 120% of your physical power built, plus 400% of your flat pin built. So I was curious, I got a request anyway to do a Feng Mao build breakdown, but I was curious anyway, what can you build to make that execute as big as possible? So that's what we've done here. I've covered about every base that I could think of. So we'll go through this spreadsheet. Again, this spreadsheet will be linked in the description as well as the pinned comment, so you can get a hold of this spreadsheet yourself, create your own builds on it. It will really only be very applicable for creating builds based around the execute, not really like solo laner builds so much. In my opinion, putting out builds for solo lane is difficult, because you really should just have an understanding of the items that you need in comparison to your competition. So that's why the Crunch build series, which I'll check that Crunch build series out if you haven't already, where I did a Crunch build spreadsheet followed by 3 games of testing Crunch, 2 in solo and 1 in jungle. It's just really hard for me to recommend, like I can't recommend a here is 6 items you should always build type thing for solo, because it's the lane that's probably the most complicated for building to your opponent and building based on match to match. Whereas something like carry, you know, mid lane and jungle even, you're pretty much building, you're building like at least 4 items ish every time that you really like or that are optimized to your playstyle, and then maybe 1 or 2 items that you're flexing into your opponents. Versus solo lane, it might be 4 items that are flexing into your opponents and like 2 or 3 items that you're building every time. So we'll go through here real quick. Like I said, I've already been rambling a lot, but wanted to give you guys a strong intro here. This is how I've got it set up. I've got all the items here that I can see being valuable for a big power or big flat pin build. And then I've got broken down all the things that they provide. And then here on the far right, I've got some important notes about their passives or other things that you get from the card that aren't listed here in the stats. The stats that I've put up here, of course, are the power on card, so just the base power that it gives, because that's where we're getting this first scaling from. And I've got all this color coded here for you. I've got the flat pin that it gives, which is really nice because you get 400% scaling from your flat pin on the execute threshold. And then I've listed their health and mana, and I've done that because I've made a category for the power added via resolution. If you have resolution, you know, it gives 2.5% of your built mana as additional power, so I've got that right here in this column. And then I've got the power added by Overlord via your health, because Overlord does the same thing as resolution. It gives you 2.5% of your built health as additional power. So those are the first 2 that I've put on the list. Just wanted to see if they were really worth anything, because I wanted to cover every base, like I said. So then the final 2 trees, we've got the execute threshold added just on the card. If you only built that card as one of your 6 items, how much extra health to the execute threshold is added. And then I've got potential execute added, so this is your on-card execute added, as well as the additional execute added from both the mana and health, either one or both, if you've got it coming from the item. So I don't think there are any items that give you health and mana that you would benefit from both, but I just combined it into one column here, of course, and then I've color-coded it as well. So I'm not going to go through all these items. See, all these ones I've got listed early in the tree here are all the flat pin items, and all of these numbers are updated to the 1.0 patch notes item balances. So there was very few of them. Like Perforator got 1 more pin, and like Painweaver got extra power. I think Vanquisher lost 1 pin. It was at 9 before. So these are all updated to the 1.0 in case you were curious. This is up to date, and this spreadsheet will be up to date, so you can use it to make your own builds. But here's how it's laid out. You know, pull up this spreadsheet or pause this video, take a look at these little descriptions that I've wrote about the passives if you're interested or you're not familiar with all these items. But basically, these are all the items that I can foresee being any value at all, really, for adding to your execute range. There may be a couple other like carry items that give you big power, but those are not, you're not building carry items for the most part on Feng Mao. There's a couple I've put in here just because, you know, like Vanquisher, because it gives you flat pin and such as that. And then I've put some, I did some testing down here with items that give you health for like the warrior tree, even though they don't give you as much power or any flat pin. Just had to check to make sure that the like Overlord scaling bonus didn't put them in a really strong range. So overall, what it comes out to is there are 1, 2, 3, 4 items, all from the assassin tree, that will add 86 health threshold damage to your execute by building them. So that is pretty decent. You know, you've got Vanquisher, which is actually, you know, from the carry tree, Nightfall, Demon Edge, and Omen, which all add 86 execute threshold. And since none of those offer any health or mana, they also give you 86 damage threshold whether you build Resolution or Overlord or not. So those are kind of 4 of the outlier items that are pretty strong. Then you've got Resolution, which is right up there with them because it does give you flat pin, it does give you some power, and then it gives you a huge amount of mana with the mana scaling. So, you know, just from building it, you get that mana scaling. You don't have to combo it with anything. And that will give you 87 health execute threshold just from building it. So again, a very strong item. And I've highlighted all these stronger ones. And then lastly, Pain Weaver, just because it gives you so much power, 50 on-card power, plus 8 flat pin. Pain Weaver is the highest single item you can build for execute threshold, which basically means you should probably have it on all of your Feng Mao builds, whether you're in solo lane, whether you're in jungle, whether you're doing some niche stuff with them at like support somehow. I don't know how that would really be possible, but I've seen people play them at mid and whatnot. Pain Weaver is a must, a significant improvement or a significant advantage over every other item. So those are all the on cards. Then looking at the potential execute added, I've highlighted a couple here. You've got Mesmer, which gives you 300 health in addition to its big power and flat pin. So if you are building Overlord or you're doing some sort of tanky build where you're in solo lane or whatnot, Mesmer with Overlord will get you up to 86 execute threshold on its own. Of course, you're paying for that because Overlord itself gives you a very small execute threshold. Oh, actually, this should be higher. This should be, oh no, it would be if I didn't know what I was doing, but I already have it corrected so that Resolution and Overlord's execute added on card is equal to their potential execute, because just from building execute or just from building Overlord, you'll get the power on card, the no flat pin, and then the Overlord health added. Whereas most of these in this tree does not include either of these, but you know, you see, I know what I'm doing here, guys. I know what I'm doing. I know how to work Excel. So this is the, you know, a pretty nice pickup here from Mesmer. I mean, it gives you 300 health, so getting 89 execute threshold out of one card is good. I've coded it green for you because that is one of the stronger items there. And then coming down here, if you are building Resolution, you get pretty good value out of Envy. You know, it still doesn't get to the 86 number that you can pick up from, you know, those other 4, you know, basic assassin tree items that have flat pin on it, but it does get you up to 83.5 while still giving you the Envy bonuses, which Envy is quite strong on Feng Mao generally because you get a silence after leaping. So after you hit your leap, now they did just nerf this to a 60-second cooldown instead of a 45-second cooldown, but after you do your leap, you hit somebody, they get silenced for a second. That's pretty strong on somebody like Feng Mao who's blowing up people. That 1-second silence can be enough to keep them from getting away, keep them from firing back at you with any sort of strong ability like an ult. You know, think if you blink onto with not your actual blink. Actually, I don't know if your blink itself triggers Envy. That's something I should probably test, but if you dash onto like a Fey and then you hit them with a silence, they can't drop their ult on you and try to run away. So very strong, and they can't use their blink out either. So if you are building Resolution, Envy is not one of the highest value ones, but its passive is valuable enough alone to where you should probably be building it most of the time on Feng Mao, even after the 60-second change to its passive. So, and then down here in the health trees, none of them really get anywhere close to the items that give you flat pin, because that flat pin scaling at 400% is just like unbeatable. But I have highlighted Salvation. You know, it gives you 500 health, so you get a substantial amount of power added when you build your Overlord if you're comboing it with it. Same thing as with Bone Saw if you're building Bone Saw, but with Salvation particularly, it gives you 40 power, so it ends up coming out to 63 execute threshold added, which, you know, is good if you're already doing a solo lane build where you're building other health items. and you're getting the value out of Overlord, this one is a decent one to add in the mix. Plus it has a good passive to keep you alive if you're going like glass cannon type burst. And then finally, Tainted Blade. Again, if you're building Overlord, it gives you good value because it's got 350 health attached and already a good power number. But it also gives you a really strong passive, being that you get anti-heal, and then after you've applied anti-heal, the target, it's actually written as target takes additional damage proc, so your whole team will do more damage to them, or they just take additional damage from any source after you've procced that. So pretty strong effect. Like I said, none of these are really that valuable unless you're building multiple health items and you're going for an Overlord build. So these are all the items. Check them out for yourself. Rogue starter and warrior starter down here at the bottom. These are the stats for any of the three, items that it builds into, or just next Witchstalker or Iceborne Judgment Brutalix. Some of those did get passive timer adjustments, or I guess I should say active timer adjustments in the last patch, so you can build any one of those three and get good value out of it. But you can see from the numbers that the Rogue starter will always outperform the Warrior starter, of course, because that flat pin is getting multiplied by 4 when it's being added to the threshold versus the power, which is being multiplied by 1.2. So these are the numbers. Come in here, play with it yourself, add some more items if you're interested, but I don't think any will be anywhere near close. These, especially these ones that I've highlighted here. So the convenient thing is, since there's not that many that offer that high of a execute threshold added, it's pretty easy to formulate builds that generate big executes. But before we do that, we'll just talk about real quick must build items and why. So in conclusion, from the table up here, must build items, Painweaver. Like I said, it's the most execute added by any single item with or without resolution / overlord benefits. So, it's simply just, if you're looking for execute threshold, it is a must build. It has a pretty decent passive too. I've covered it up here. Painweaver. It's stacking pin and movement speed whenever you hit your ability. So I don't remember if it's 2. I think every time you cast an ability, you get 2 pin and a little bit more movement speed. So it's going to stack up even more than this because you're going to have extra pin on top. So Painweaver is a must build for Feng Mao. Extremely valuable on him. Most value out of any single item. Second up, Perforator. This doesn't just apply to Feng Mao, of course. This applies to literally every hero in the game, maybe except for supports, but you need percent pin late game. It doesn't matter, even if you're on Feng Mao and you have 50 flat pin built, you need percent pin. Percent pin is king. There's only 3% pin items in the game, and you need to be building one of them if your goal is to deal damage, because late game, when an opponent hero, even if it's not the tank, even if it's the carry who has 60, 70 armor just from their level up bonuses, you need that percent pin to get through it, because building that 1% pin item is going to give you the equivalent of, on a tank, if you're hitting a tank like steel, that 1% pin item is going to give you the equivalent of like 4 or 5 flat pin items, because they're going to have so much armor. You need percent pin no matter what. But Perforator is the one specifically for this hero because it also gives you flat pin. If we look up here, I should have probably put it at the top, but it gives you flat pin in addition to the fact that it gives you percent pin. And it only adds 76 execute threshold by itself because it doesn't have that insane of a power number or like that insane of a pin number combination. But 76 is still good. I mean, you see it's still among the top of the pack. It's just not one of the top 6 items or anything. But regardless, you're not just executing people, you are damaging people, and you need percent pin to get that damage to go through. So I can't stress it enough that every damage dealing role has to have their percent pin item built. I learned that most prominently from the mage power, big mage power spreadsheet that I did a while back, and then following it up with damage numbers testing. I was just surprised that even on heroes that had no armor built, no armor items built, the percent pin item still just gives you so much more damage that it's a must build every single time. And then the final must build item for Feng Mao is the Rogue Starter. It's why you see it's always recommended when you load up into Feng Mao for the first time. Looking from right here, the Rogue Starter versus the Warrior Starter. The Rogue Starter will just always outclass the Warrior Starter in execute added. Overlord build is included. You see you don't get that much power from the health on the Warrior Starters. So, 34 extra execute added, so about 15, a little over 15 actually. Additional execute coming from the Rogue Starter versus building the Warrior Starter. It's really just your best option. If you don't like Ortis, Nex, or Witchstalker for whatever reason, which Nex is very good, so I don't know why you wouldn't like one of those, then you could go for the Warrior one. It's not that big of a deal, but if you want absolute execute threshold, Rogue Starter it is. So that was a lot of yapping. Into the builds here, we'll go through them quick. I've just got 3 here, and they're very simple, so not too much to look at. We've got the Resolution build. Resolution is extremely valuable on Feng Mao in general. It's nice to have at least one attack speed item in there, and it covers your mana usage, so you don't have to worry about running out of mana as much. So what we've got here, Rogue Starter, any of the Rogue Starters, and then we've got the execute that they add here, and then the total at the bottom. So Rogue Starter adding 34, Painweaver, like I said, is a must build. Adding 92 on its own is insane, most in the game. Perforator, build your flat pin or else you don't know what you're doing. Resolution, this is called the Resolution build, so no surprise there. Envy, adding 83.5. Execute threshold only isn't as much as some of these that add 86, but if you're building Resolution particularly, you are to just build Envy. I think most Feng Mao builds could benefit from Envy anyway, but you really want to build Resolution with it to get the most out of it, so because you get that extra 250 mana from it. So Envy I would categorize as a must build in a Resolution type setup. And then the nice thing about this build is, since Omen, Demon Edge, Nightfall, and Vanquisher are all equal in their pin added, you can build 2 of the 4 of this. So this gives you diversity. Again, this is only something you're going to want to build in jungle because this does not have any health and armor built into it. This is all flat pin, maximizing your execute threshold. So, you're kind of glass cannon-y at the end of the day, but on this type of build where you're getting Painweaver, Perforator, Resolution, Envy, probably not in that order. The order is probably Resolution, Painweaver, Envy, Perforator, or flexing one of these before those, but definitely Resolution first. You've got the option to flex into any 2 of these, so if they're building shields, you put on Demon Edge as one of these, if they have somebody that procs shields. If you want a little bit more sustain in your fights, you build Nightfall as one of these 2, get your little sustain. If you want just extra execute threshold and some crit damage on your autos for whatever reason, throw Vanquisher in here. It's important to note though that Vanquisher isn't going to add on to your execute threshold because the execute threshold is not categorized as damage, so you're not there's a big gap between how much damage your ult does and then what the execute threshold is. So this isn't just adding 6% or whatever, 5% onto your execute threshold, because it doesn't work like that. Your ult's not dealing damage in that way, it's just taking them out completely. So this would add a 5% extra potential to kill onto your ult if they're not in execute range, but realistically you're probably not hitting your execute unless you see that pop up and they're in range. So overall this comes out to almost 550 execute damage added, and then on top of the base execute, which is 660 at max rank, you're hitting over 1200 health execute thresholds by the end of the game, which is pretty excessive. It's pretty absurd. I didn't really realize before crunching the numbers like this that people were out there building Feng Mao and executing people from 1200 health. Like that's a huge execute threshold. If you think about how much health a carry has at the end of the game, or how much health a mid laner has at the end of the game on an average build, it's probably only around 2500, maybe a little bit more if they've got a couple buffs up, or if they've bought a tonic, or if they've been, you know, building something with a couple more health items. But a third to a half of a carry's or mid laner's health, or an enemy jungler probably's health, is under 1200. So massive damage execute threshold there. That's just crazy. So going on to the next one, let's say you wanted to build Overlord, or you wanted to get some value out of your Overlord build and still have a little bit of less glass cannon in you. I've crunched this one together with Overlord, where you take the Warrior starter instead. You know, it's only a minor loss for potentially wanting to use Ice-Scorn, Judgment, or Brutalix. You know, if you want those actives, or you want that's the Warrior starter's passive in the mid lane, or in the solo lane or in jungle early game, because it does give you that Omni Vamp, then yeah, you may want Warrior starter. So Warrior starter, again, Painweaver, Perforator, build them. I mean, just build them. There's no excuse not to. Overlord, because that is what the build is based off of. And then after that, that leaves you 3 slots left. So we've got Mesmer in here, because Mesmer gives you the health and the pin, so it actually gets you to 89 execute threshold added after Overlord. So it beats out these 4 items here that only give you 86. So 89 threshold added from Mesmer with Overlord gives you really good value and good safety, because it gives you the spell shield on top. Salvation, again, massive health pool added with the shield. So, you know, you got Mesmer and Salvation. You've got a lot of nice survivability procs there, and good value from it after Overlord. And then Tainted Blade, again, it gives you extra pin, it gives you your anti-heal, gives you nice little health bonus, so less glass cannony. Overall, we see that this comes out to 449, basically 450 added damage, or added health threshold execute, which comes out to 1109, basically 1110 total execute threshold at the end of the game. So you can see that's only about 100 less execute threshold on a number that's already absurd, you know, 1200 versus 1100. You know, how much difference does that extra 100 health threshold make? But on this Overlord build, you've got 1650 additional health built. This is summing up all the health added from Salvation, Tainted Blade, and your Warrior starter, and Overlord itself, and Mesmer. So 1650 additional health built compared to this Resolution build, just for about 100 less execute threshold. So to me, that is pretty enticing. Being less glass cannony and still having that huge of a damage threshold or execute threshold is just nice. It kind of makes more sense than building like this, but you know, it comes down to what passives you want from these items, because both of these are huge numbers. It's just, do you want the Envy Silence on the dive in? Do you want the Demon Edge anti-shields? Do you want the Vanquisher? Do you want, you know, what are you looking for? If you're looking for survivability, this one's got you. You could still comfortably build this in jungle because, you know, you've got your pin, you've got, you know, everything you need really to clear and be a little bit more survivable. So I like this Overlord build. We probably will try it out some, especially with the Feng Mao buffs that came in 1.0. We're going to have to hop into jungle with them and see how that feels. Now, finally, one that's not really advisable or whatever, but it is the I only care about executes build. This is just, you know, for theory crafting or number crunching purposes. What if you only built it for executes? So you took out basically this is taking out Perforator, which never ever do that. Don't take out Perforator. But I only build for executes, you know, Rogue Starter, Painweaver, Resolution, Omen, Demon Edge, Nightfall, Vanquisher. So that's all 4 of the 86 items. The 187 threshold add item in Resolute, Pain Weaver because it adds the most of any single item, and then plus your Rogue starter, which adds the most of any of the starter options. And you see it gets you up to 1217. You'll see here in a second in the testing, it really comes out to around 1220-ish once everything else is factored in and calculated up. So, you know, marginal difference between having this build where you have Perforator and your other abilities can deal damage, or you can have this build where you don't have Perforator, your other abilities deal significantly less damage, and you pick up 20 extra health threshold for your execute. So don't build this, but if you're just curious of what is the highest number I can see built, it's around 1220. You'll see that here in just a second, like I said. So thanks for checking out the spreadsheet. We're going to hop into the training ground where you saw that intro execute on the steel test dummy from, and go through this build right here. Actually, is the one we put in just to see the number pop up and see what that looks like in game, because you know you see 1200 here, but it's hard to visualize that on someone's health bar. Now, unfortunately, as you'll see, the test dummy is steel, so the health bar look isn't like shockingly insane. You're not executing from half his health because it's steel. He gets a lot of level up health, but we'll just take a look and see how it looks. So that's going to do it for the spreadsheet, guys. Thanks for checking it out. Let's hop into the training ground, close us out with that real quick. And like I said again, if you want this spreadsheet, it'll be linked. Hop in here, play with it yourself. Come through here. If you're not familiar with these items, I think this is about any item you could really get good value out of Feng Mao on. And of course, reiterating, this is only for execute threshold in the jungle or whatnot. If you're building in solo lane, you're probably building, you know, 4 of these items, maybe 3 of these items, and then more health and armor items because you got to be somewhat survivable. So check it out. Pull up the spreadsheet for yourself. Let's hop into the training ground. Alrighty, folks, so we are here in the testing ground, and we have got the build set up similar to how I just outlined. This is the full I only care about executing build, so you know, Resolution, Pain Weaver, Omen, Demon Edge, Nightfall, and Vanquisher. Coming out to a little over 400 power, over 50 flat pin. And if we look at our breakdown here, it says on Earth Shatter, 903 damage prior to pin, and if a hero is below 1221 health, execute them. 1221, I calculated around 1217. I don't know, but either way, over 1200 execute range. We've got this steel here so we can see what that looks like. Now, steel isn't a great example because he's got such a massive health pool from leveling up. You see he's got Fire Blossom built and like Goliath crest and everything, but he's got such a ridiculous health pool that this isn't really a good example. I wish that you could change what test dummy was here, because you know, if we put a carry here or something that has, you know, 2500 health, then that 1200 execute range is basically half of their health bar, which is insane. But on a big bulky tank like steel, it's not going to look as ridiculous as it's going to look in game. When you're trying to blow up, you're mainly trying to execute the mids or the carries. So you see the execute range still hasn't popped up here, and he is getting around a third health. So he's going to have to be, he must have just a massive health pool. Okay, yeah, you see right around there, right around a quarter health, the execute pop-up is coming in. So we'll hit that. So it doesn't look absurd on Steel's health bar, you know, just being honest. But on a carry or a mids, it's going to look absolutely insane. We'll go ahead and hit the execute here on him. Look at the range that execute has too. Very strong range. We will hit it when he pops back up here so we can see. So it just has 477 pop up there on him, despite the fact that we have so much pin. So like I said, steel isn't a great example because just so much level up armor and health that it makes it look ridiculous. But this is what the full build looks like on the I only care about execute build. Again, you're probably not building this one. Maybe you're building this exact one in jungle, but it does get you the maximum execute threshold possible. Look at our necks too stacking up. Let's see what our next dash damage does here. Oh, I kind of missed it. But it was a lot though. I mean, it took his health way down. Huge neck stacks. You can see when you don't have execute off cooldown, the execute indicator does not pop up, so keep that in mind as well. It's only going to come up when you actually have it off of cooldown and ready to go. So that's the build, guys. Hope you enjoyed. Hope you Feng Mao players out there. I mean, you're probably already building a mostly flat pin build, I would assume, because he has all these different abilities that scale with it. If we look at the, just kind of keeping him low here. If we look at the safeguard, it's gained 31% movement speed, scaling off of our flat pin as well. So with this much flat pin, that is a lot of movement speed. You can't really, doesn't really look that insane there, and it is a pretty short, buff because it's only while the shield holds up. So when the shield goes away there, you no longer get it. But 2.5 seconds of 31% movement speed is nice. It can help you get away. It can help you chase people. So yeah, that will do it for this video, guys. Thanks for checking it out. Like I said, you know, if you want the spreadsheet, it'll be in the comments, in the pinned comment, as well as the description. So I'm making these spreadsheets for you guys to use, not just to make videos off of. So hop in here, make your own builds. We'll go for one more execute on this steel. He is healing very fast, so we got to make sure we catch it at a good point here. And there we go. We will see y'all in the next one. Look for some more spreadsheet videos coming soon now that we're on the 1.0 patch. And I hope you guys enjoyed.